I've talked about many web cartoons on this channel that have to deal with a show that's at first cute, then not so cute. Terrible Mouse was the first, with Pretty Blood, Happy Tree Ferns, and House of Puso following them, and Critters, which is only a week old as of writing this, is the newest and most unique addition to this niche genre of web cartoons, while also being the most unknown due to its recency. Interestingly, it combines a lot of what its predecessors did, mixing the comedy of Happy Tree Friends, the serious tone of Terrible Mouse and Pretty Blood, and the extremely dark subject matter of House of Puso, while being a bizarre mystery story on top of all of that. But since you most likely don't know what the show is, I'll give a quick overview and summary. I first found out about this series' existence back in November when the creator asked for some critique on an early version of it. And now that it came out after about 2 years of work, Critters Pushin Up Daisies by Tess Folger is a Pretty Blood and Happy Tree Friends inspired dark mystery cartoon that used its visuals as a strong, shocking juxtaposition between what the tone starts off as and becomes. Since this is a 16-minute pilot that came out a week ago, it's possible that in the future it may be completely different, but nonetheless, I'll still give you a short summary of what actually happens in the pilot and an analysis of its main mystery before I break down what works in it and what doesn't. We open with the main character Batty waking up after seeing a dream of 6 empty pillars, which she writes down as something she shouldn't worry about. After that, she and her friend Gruffy go out and intend to hang out with their friend Rocky, but Bro gets ran over by a car and then there's a funeral for him, and once Batty goes to sleep, one of the pillars lights up green. After some time passes, Gruffy and Batty get over it, enough to function normally in society, though it's still bothering them because Batty keeps seeing Rocky everywhere in different people. So as she's out with some friends, Cutie and Giddy, her friend Giddy tells her that he's in support of her and that she'll be okay. But then a fan falls from the ceiling and slices his face right off in front of Batty, which causes her to freak the hell out and immediately leave the party. Some time passed from this point as Batty locked herself in her room, constantly being reminded mentally of the violent deaths of her friends through flashing images in her mind as another pillar lights up blue. Gruffy comes by to interrupt Batty's tweaking to tell her that what happened wasn't an accident as it was intentional, and they go to the house where the incident happened. And the owner of the house, Bunny, shows them camera footage of people with doll-faced masks tampering with the ceiling fan, which led to Giddy's death. With the realization that Giddy was actually murdered and it wasn't an accident, Gruffy and Batty go to Cutie's house only to find that she either hanged herself or is hung by those murderers. Things get even worse for Batty's mental state as she just saw both of her friends get killed and she stays locked in her room paranoid that she'll be next for a whole month. Eventually she gets another dream of the pillars after Cutie's death and sees that another one has been activated, this time it's pink, and when she screams asking what it is or what it wants, Gruffy calls her and tells her that she's at Buffy's house because someone broke into her house, and Gruffy asks her to come over. She gets there to see that Gruffy's smoking now to calm down and that Buffy is the place basically locked down as he has weapons, though Batty's still paranoid that he'll just die too, and that's what happens as Buffy throws up blood and Batty calls the police for help. But once they're out of her sight, her friends are suddenly gone and the window is broken in a room. Batty chases the trail of blood into this extremely weird meat tree thing, which she goes inside of, and then she watches Buffy get sliced open as this guy named the Shepherd tells Batty about how he's excited for her to kill him now because all the pillars finally have been satisfied, and so he has no reason to live anymore, which is when he kills Gruffy, and it ends with Batty tweaking as she's being pushed to kill the Shepherd, but we don't know if she does, and that's how it ends. While the ending is completely insane and we learn a ton, it all flows very nicely together, though before I actually analyze in detail why Critters works so well, I want to talk about what the pillars are since it's the only real lingering mystery after you're done watching the pilot. What are the pillars? The deaths, the depression, and the true nature of the series is all directly shown to us in the pilot. The only actual question or thing you can make theories about are the pillars, and though there's a lot of specific things we can't figure out, like why Batty was chosen, why the pillars weren't activated by these guys but just killing her family members when she was a kid, what the pillars actually do upon them all being activated, what the other cult members see in their dreams, and why and how does Shepherd know all of this stuff while Batty doesn't. I guess we can say that that's a tradition, but why doesn't Batty know about this tradition? We can still get some general facts about them. For each pillar to activate, it's clear that someone who's emotionally close to Batty must be sacrificed, which is why all of her friends were chosen, and these people must die in front of her or their dead bodies must be seen by Batty. Functionality wise, this is clear by the fact that the cult waited for Batty to come into the weird meat tree thing before they killed Gruffy and Buffy so that she actually saw it happen, and that the pink pillar, which was activated by Cutie's death, only activated after Batty saw Cutie's dead body. And even more so by the fact that no deaths happened at all both times when Batty locked herself in a room for extended periods of time. Whether or not Cutie's death is actually suicide would have been unknown if the creator hadn't added a suicide warning in the comments, so we know that taking yourself out still counts towards the pillars being activated, which means any kind of death counts as long as Batty or the cursed person sees it or the corpse. There's also a clear order in which her friends are supposed to die, as there are many moments where Gruffy and Batty are alone, but Gruffy is only killed after Buffy, since Gruffy was the second to last pillar behind Shepard. Because of these things that the pillar shows us, it then makes sense as to why they weren't all just killed in a random order in a single day without Batty being there, and then Batty gets kidnapped not knowing what even happened, to then being pushed into killing Shepard. That would have been a far more effective and quick strategy compared to what actually happened in the pilot, but since Batty's presence when each person dies is necessary for each pillar's activation, that's why they didn't do it. With more deaths, Batty seems to have more control over herself whenever this dream happens. Initially she writes about how she wasn't able to speak during the dream, but by Cutie's death she's able to ask, "What do you want?" which most likely means that due to these deaths she's growing closer to whatever spiritual power the pillars have on her and the world. And with some deaths, like when Buffy throws up blood and Gruffy tells Batty to call 911, or Giddy's death to the fan, an element of fate is added as her mom comments about the pillars back when she was a kid, when Batty told her about seeing them, saying that fate has mysterious ways of working. Giddy and Buffy's deaths, due to the way that they happen, are impossible to actually enact, since it'd be impossible to know that tampering with the fan in a random spot with a party would lead to the perfect person dying, and that probably whatever poison Buffy took would take effect at the perfect time, which implies that the cult has some kind of foreknowledge or understanding of what'll be fated to happen when it comes to the pillars, when it comes to trying to kill their targets. So we can deduce that each pillar's activation is based off of Batty seeing their friends dying, and that when Batty doesn't interact or see the people close to her, they end up being fine. And we can deduce that the enemies or the cult have foreknowledge that they take advantage of in order to kill Batty's friends, thanks to whatever powers the pillars bestowed upon them. None of this answers the more specific questions like why the Shepherd chose not to kill her friends, why her family wasn't chosen instead, or even how the fate abilities actually work. But to be effective as an episode, it doesn't need to answer these specific questions. This is an interesting enough mystery that can be pieced together after just a few rewatches and paying attention, and it feels rewarding to actually break down and realize what exactly is happening, and so I want to talk about positives, good mystery implementation. One of the most popular mystery anime, Death Note, is extremely well known because of its ease of access and how it implements its mysteries. Spoiler warning for the entire series, but just about each and every mystery of the show is either black and white in us knowing what's going on or not, and never being able to solve them on our own because we follow both the perspective of the main character Light and the antagonist L. We know what Light is planning out and what L is thinking at the same time, and despite this, the show is able to keep us in the dark completely about what will happen during certain moments, like the final confrontation with Mikami and Nier and why he failed, in specific detail, or about if Light was truly going to die to his father during the execution car scene, and what L's plan behind that actually was. Since sometimes it doesn't show us any clues of what the characters are thinking before things happen, and then afterwards it gives an explanation. It's powerful and easy to get into because since there's no real gray area in what we do or don't know, it's easy to understand and enjoy since we as an audience don't have to put much into actually understanding or piecing together what's going on, which is engaging since it feels like we're figuring out mysteries despite us never doing any work, and so it's great for all audiences. Despite this, there are still some genuine mysteries we can and have to, as an audience, use logic to piece together and understand. Like the unnamed Shinigami within this series most likely being Light Yagami, which isn't spelled out at all to us. This side of Death Note powerfully engages more analytical minds that are also interested in figuring out the truth to actual mysteries as well, which is another part of why Death Note is such an amazing show. It might sound like a silly comparison on the surface, but Creep Critters does exactly this combination of mysteries we either already know the answer to, or flat out cannot solve on our own, and mysteries we can solve with logic. I just logically deduced the general important information about how the pillars worked, and the clues as to how they worked are placed in many places throughout the pilot, while mysteries like the reveal of people intentionally causing the accidents that keep killing Batty's friends are things we couldn't have possibly figured out, because we get no clues about it. The characters are in the dark about it, and so are we about many other things and how they work, like the meat tree, who the shepherd is, what the pillars actually do, why a cult was formed around it, and more. This sets up for the show to later answer these things directly, and since we get no clues about it, it causes us to rely on the show and more episodes of it to come out, or an episode that's foreshadowing, which keeps us hooked to watch whatever the next installment will be, to see if the mysteries and questions will be answered, while it still has things we can theorize and piece together like the pillars. And through all of this, the most plot important details, like Death Note, what's black and white and what we know, as opposed to it being the other way around, which allows the general audience to sit down and understand what's going on, while more analytical people like me can chew on how the pillars work. This mixing of mystery types within both shows would make them engaging for practically everybody, and even then, it's only part of why Creep Critters is such a great web cartoon, since its tonal control, pacing, and art style is incredible as well. Creep Critters starts off all goofy and silly with fun music and editing, and when Rocky's hit by the car, his blood's not only pink, but he dies in a goofy, non-violent way, with Batty and Gruffy looking at him with Sir Pello-esque faces with the music cutting out. This humorous moment will make you think that this cartoon will have a similar sense of humor as Happy Tree Friends, though it's immediately juxtaposed to Gruffy and Batty grieving and crying about this. Batty seeing Rocky everywhere randomly in public, and Giddy's death, which is far more violent, sudden, and gruesome than Rocky's. The tone changes from being light to dark slowly in between Rocky and Giddy's death via the multiple mourning and paranoid scenes, but the tone's controlled well so that this increasing seriousness of later scenes is never unnatural or sudden. By the point we get to Giddy's death, we're already in a tonally neutral spot, and so the suddenness and violence of his death in comparison to Rocky and how it affects Batty comfortably and powerfully signals in that moment that these deaths are now serious, and so Batty's more horrified and animated reaction fits perfectly, and the tone never lightens up after that outside of one moment with Gruffy smoking, which isn't even that light and more so of a neutral silly moment. It's funny, sure, but not intentionally made to be hilarious, as at max, it'll get a light breath from you or a silent chuckle, which keeps the currently tense tone perfectly as it barely relieves any pressure, so that when Batty shoves Buffy away and talks about how she thinks he'll die too, the moment before doesn't feel tonally contradictory. Even when things got completely insane with the meat tree, despite its sudden introduction, it felt more like a review and chaotic conclusion to all the craziness and deaths as opposed to a badly done, unearned random shift into insanity, because the show never took any shifts. And by now, we're in the final part of the show where all the pillars have been activated. The concept of the pillars is already crazy, and so this thing that certainly one-ups it is crazy, but crazy in a way that's effective and not jarring. The meat tree is when we finally get closer to the answer of what the pillars are, and the end of the random impossible to pull off deaths, which is why it feels earned and it sticks with you. Art style wise, the show is also pretty unique. Unlike Pretty Blood or House of Puso, it doesn't try at all to copy the style of older internet cartoons or its juxtaposition, and instead it uses a very recognizable and simple art style a lot of kids draw on today, especially in things like the animation meme scene. Because of that, it still creates the vibe of a cute and innocent cartoon since even the blood is pink, while being pretty unique in its approach. Whether or not this art style makes a cartoon not work for you, or if you don't mind it like me, it's still able to feel a bit unsettling and off because of the art style and everything happening within it. It's also effective because it works completely within the bounds of this simple style, with moments like Batty being freaked out and having slightly more detail. This way it feels fully grounded and consistent in its aesthetic and unique to what it is and what it's trying to do specifically, which helps a lot with immersion and helps sell the disconnect in what the art style is and what happens usually with art styles of this nature and what's actually happening in the cartoon. Characterization, positives and negatives. I'm overall mixed on the characterization within this pilot. It's clear this was going for a characterization thought process similar to Happy Tree Friends, as each character in this pilot is extremely basic, with the exception somewhat being baddies, since each and every character was intended to be killed. In Happy Tree Friends, each character had a single gimmick, like Flaky's cowardice, the mole's blindness, and Flippy's PTSD to shake up each and every episode with different combinations of characters, so the deaths aren't exactly the same every time. But they weren't given enough character to really be memorable or people you could attach to and like, because in Happy Tree Friends, everybody's supposed to die in the end anyway, as that's the entire gimmick of the show. Creep Critters is similar in this regard, as every one of Batty's friends were clearly created with the intent to die, but the thing about that is that unlike Happy Tree Friends, everybody in Creep Critters basically has no personality or main gimmick that defines them. Yes, these are fundamentally different shows, as HDF is an episodic comedy about everyone dying, and this clearly isn't trying to be episodic. But for us to feel slightly more for, or to remember these characters more, the author could have given each character some kind of gimmick, like making Buffy protective, Giddy stupid, or Gruffy edgy and mean, for example. That way it wouldn't have taken me 4 rewatches to remember everybody's name. With Cuties, I forgot her name as of writing this, and just thought of her as that dog one, because she is just that dog one that kills herself. These people mean a lot to Batty but nothing to us, and even Batty herself is somewhat of a nothing character despite being the main one. Batty's nice, I guess, but most of her actions throughout the pilot are impacted majorly by seeing her friends die, which is why I say that she's somewhat of an exception. The thing about Batty is that the implementation of her reaction to her friends' deaths, the trauma and depression it causes, and the paranoia is displayed and shown in an amazing way, especially because of how it ramps up. After Rocky's death, she's disturbed, but she only sees him in random strangers. Then after Giddy, she panics and hides in her room for what seems to be a month, since she's scared of everyone dying. And the same happens when she sees Cutie's dead body, and her declining mental state is best shown by the walking scene, where as she's walking, you can see the outlines of her friends that died, which symbolizes that they all are still heavily on her mind. The best part of her character is how she changes during her breakdowns, and how it's portrayed. It's flatly just showing you without any flashy graphics or noises, and instead through quiet transitions and sudden moments that snap her back into reality. And the difference art style wise between her and the start versus her going to Buffy's house is extremely notable. In the start, she's normal and, light colors and stuff, while later, she's more disheveled and her features are sharper. Though her actual characterization is non-existent. We don't really know what Batty is like at all, and we don't know her friends either, because neither her nor her friends were fleshed out as people, so her friend's death successfully functioned to fuel the great execution of Batty's breakdowns and growing paranoia around everything that's happened. Though she and her friends as actual characters don't work since they practically have no character. They all exist as pieces in the story to fuel Batty's declining mental state and nothing more. This is why I'm mixed on the characterization, though something I'm not mixed on is the pilot label and what's next. Critters is not and does not function as a pilot or an episode 1, as it's way more akin to a short film. A pilot's simply a showcase of ideas you want to present to an audience or some kind of studio in hopes that they fund it, criticize it, and turn it into something they'd like, so you can get the money to actually make it a show. And usually, they're non-canon because the ideas being shown are in a rough, imperfected state. Think of Steven Universe's pilot, for example, as we get basic info about who the characters are and how the show generally is like, but the designs and animation style is very different. Critters solves too many of its own mysteries in the pilot to be considered as a showcase of ideas or a rough idea, and in episode 1 for the series doesn't work either in my opinion for the same reason. The start to ending fully feels like that. All of Batty's friends are already dead, most of the mysteries have been solved, and the ending feels less like a cliffhanger and more like a genuine ending that lets you decide or assume what happened next given everything Batty went through. I'm comfortable and satisfied with the ending, and really, this feels like a short film that could have a part 2, as opposed to the start of a series of episodes or a pilot, not something that necessarily should or needs one, which is why I'm unsure about how this will continue. I'd like to see it continue, don't get me wrong, since I'm a fan of this, but we already saw everything very interesting and major to the plot be resolved for the most part. All of Batty's friends are dead, we understand the gimmick, we can generally figure out how the pillars work and that cult that killed Batty's friends to satisfy them, and we already saw how Batty's mental state shifts. I personally only see this going in 2 ways. One is that we cut away and focus to the next person who gets cursed with this pillar thing, and they're somehow able to fight back against them with Batty potentially as the leader or the shepherd still alive since Batty couldn't bring herself to kill him. Or 2, Batty fully crashes out, fights and beats the shepherd, and then she becomes a new leader of the cult. And through both of them we learn way more about the pillars. Both of these could introduce new mysteries into the show, but both would definitely have to answer more specifics pertaining to the pillars. And both of those specific goals could very easily be done in a part 2 in the same amount of time as the first episode to fully cap off the series given its rather quick pacing. I'm interested to see how this will go though and whatever the creator's planning as a fan. I'm just not sure how this will continue given what we already get due to us getting what feels like a solid mysterious ending as opposed to a cliffhanger. And most mysteries and crazy events are already happening within the first part, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be like Pretty Blood where multiple arcs are happening that aren't related to each other. Like Bunchy Prison for example, which was not really related to Red Snow, but Red Snow is happening at a similar time, that's what I mean. Conclusion and creator interview. I think Critters is great and it only has a few real issues, and even the issues I think it has aren't that big. I suggest you watch Critters, and for everyone interested, for the creation of this video, I decided to ask the creator some questions about the series. Here are the questions and answers. 1. How long did it take to create Critters and what aspect of it took the longest? Tess. I started Critters when I was 16, so it took about 2 years to make. It's gone through so many changes throughout the years, but I think this pilot is the best I could have conjured up. The longest part that felt like it would never end was the ending and the mall scene. 2. What's your favorite part of the pilot and what was the hardest thing to execute and implement? Tess. My favorite part of the pilot is Giddy's death. It really stuck with people. I'm very proud of it. The hardest thing to implement, however, was the ending. I rattled my brain trying to think of something that made sense. Unfortunately, this left me with a messy storyline that I'm planning to fix in the future. 3. What are your biggest inspirations for the creation of Critters? Oh yeah, as I was watching this, I keep accidentally calling it Critters and not Creep Critters. I always think of it, it's Creature Critters. No, it's Creep Critters. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep making that mistake. Tess, the biggest inspiration was Pretty Blood. I had the idea for Creep Critters while I was still in the middle of a breakdown. The earlier versions of Creep Critters is a lot uglier than what we have now. 4. Is this your first work or story, or is this after the culmination of many before it? Tess, this is my first animated web series. I'm planning to do more stuff in the far future, but for now, I'm simply focusing on Creep Critters. I've animated my entire life, but this is my first polished project. 5. Do you want this series to get massive with millions watching, or is a smaller audience more your speed? Tess, a smaller audience, what I have currently, is more my speed. I'm not sure how large Creep Critters is going to get, but as long as I keep creating stuff for it, I think I'll be fine. 6. Is this purely a passion project or more than that? Tess, purely a passion project. It's also a small homage to my father. We grew up watching Agretsuko and Happy Tree Friends, in parentheses, crazy thing they grew up on. 7. After Creep Critters is finished, do you have any ideas or stories you want to create, since by then you'd have an established audience, or is it secret? Tess, I might focus on another project I have in the works, but I'll keep that secret for now. 8. Finally, any cool facts about the series? Tess, fun fact about Creep Critters, they all live in little fruits. Be sure to check out Critters Pushin Up Daisies for yourself, since it's actually really good. Be sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to become a member for $1 for extra non-scripted simple videos about channel plans, or just extra videos in general where I just talk about different series that stuff like that, you can actually see what I have right now for $3 for early videos, where obviously you get to see videos before anyone else that are legit actual videos. And have a good day, everyone.